Zoom shares this stuff over the internet, which is not important right now, but it also makes a recording so I can put it on YouTube later, because some people like to watch these things. All right, so I'm going to start here. I want to talk about Cyberwar. Richard Wu told me that maybe I would scare you. We'll see. But if so, that's good. It is...
They're hard to scare. I tried.
Okay, well, that's good. I've had teachers around here say, oh, don't tell me this stuff because I can't sleep at night if I hear about all these threats. I'd rather not know. And I really don't understand that. But, you know, there are some people that feel that way. So there's your warning in the spirit of parental guidance. So you should all be on Twitter. I held a question yesterday, how many people are on Twitter, and not enough hands went up. Twitter is the social network of security professionals. If you're in this business, you are expected to be on Twitter. You have to follow the right people. It is very important. One time, I used to be heavily into IPv6 deployment, which is now pretty much over. But anyway, it was a big thing like 8 years ago. And I came home after teaching a night class. I was home at like 11 p.m. Google had a conference the next morning on IPv6 deployment. And I said, boy, I want to go. I went there. Of course, the login page is gone. The registration page is gone. It's all full. So I put it on Twitter. And somebody said, all right, I'm hereby appointing you part of our task force, and you're in. And that worked. And that's what it's for. You'll be in 2011, 2012, when the cyber crime was insanely out of control. Anonymous was hacking everybody. LulzSec was hacking the FBI, government databases. I was in contact with the criminals and the police and the FBI and the Secret Service on Twitter. And several times I was able to find out about crimes in progress and resolve them before they ever hit the main media. So I mean, it's extremely effective. Of course, I don't follow, you know, like sports figures and stuff, but it's the social network if you want to reach real security professionals. The people that are doing virus analysis, people are protecting networks, the government agencies passing the laws around it, all those people are right there. And anyway, so I decided I'm getting more and more interested in management because I started like most hackers. You start with attack. Attack is much easier than defense. If you look at the world, we have the NSA with essentially infinite resources. You have Google, Microsoft, and they all get hacked. And a lot of the times they get hacked by teenagers. The Syrian Electronic Army hacked the New York Times and many other major businesses around 2012. The Syrian Electronic Army at that time was one 17-year-old in Syria, loyal to Assad. And his only skill was he was very good at contacting companies and performing social engineering. So he called up the New York Times DNS registrar and managed to convince them that he was really the appropriate representative in the New York Times. And they changed the DNS settings so nobody could see the New York Times for about a day. And it's extremely effective. And so all I want to say is defense is very, very hard. And it's also kind of dull and frustrating. And attack is super easy. You can just hardly know anything, like the script kiddie you were talking about yesterday, see some website, download some tool and run it, and now you're hacking people. So I always start with attack. DEF CON starts with attack. Beginners typically start with attack because it's very easy. And attackers usually get this arrogant attitude, I'm really smart and the defenders are just stupid. And then when you move into defense, you find out it's not that easy at all. Because defense is hard and it's really a human problem in management, which is why I've been getting more and more interested in management, because consider medical problems. People get sick and die. They get sick and die because they eat the wrong food, they don't get any exercise, they smoke, they drink. They all know they shouldn't do that. This is not a secret, but they do it anyway. So now it's the same thing with security. People just leave default passwords on things, install crappy software from their home system, don't update things, give everybody full administrative privileges on servers, and then they get hacked, of course. And they say, how could you be so stupid? And the fact is, it's hard to be right all the time. That's a management issue. How do you make sure people are doing the right thing? And I was talking to Carrie, you said, how do you convince people to do the right thing without making them too angry so they rebel? That's where the real benefits are in security, is in proper management, where you're actually measuring to see if people are doing the right thing and you're somehow making sure they do the right thing effectively. It is very difficult. The most common thing beginning security officers do is they just say no, like a high school, no cell phones. No students will be allowed to have cell phones on campus. You tell your employees no one can use social networks on campus. They tried that with me. The CEO here tried to tell me I couldn't use Twitter at all because people saw my classes and they started attacking the college to shut me up. And I knew enough to ignore him by then. You learn at colleges to ignore management. But Managers try that. And if you have a stupid rule like that is too hard, people will just break the rule. So you have to have a smarter rule. Like we will have a PR office that will handle our official Twitter feed, and you will have to move things through there. And they will say what we once said about our company. And there is a way to deal with people that are complaining about our company on social media. Smart companies are this way. If you complain about them, someone will fix your problem right away. If you just yell about them on Twitter, like an airline or something, I've done this. I complained about antivirus companies. I say, hey, I was doing a project a few years ago where I was sneaking malware through antivirus engines with Python. So I'd take Python, I'd write a keylogger, then I'd send it through Norton Antivirus. And Norton Antivirus didn't pick it up. So I put up a tweet. I said, man, take a look at this. Here's Norton. I'm running this malware. It goes right through. And immediately someone said, hi, I'm the Norton Tech Security team. How can I help you? And I said, well, that was pretty impressive right there. But I'd like a free version of your product. He said, oh, I'll pass this up to next level. But then tomorrow he said, well, the problem is you're going to VirusTotal, and VirusTotal just has the static signatures of all the malware. But if you ran the full Norton antivirus, it has heuristic detection. It will detect suspicious activity, and it'll stop it then. And I said, well, how do I get a free trial? And he gave me a link. Oh, here's a free trial version. I said, well, okay. So I tried it, and that worked. So I modified my attack. So it went through that, but that's what you should do. And people are doing that. So anyway, my latest management course that's full up next semester is this one, CISM, Security Management. And this is to discuss what it is. How do you carry the responsibility of protecting people who trust you? And this is a big issue. I know a lot of people are a lot of my students are their IT for their family. Their family might have a business. They might have people that are renting from them, and they set up the network and they secure it. And small business, large business, and governments, you have somebody high up who is deciding how to protect the people that trust them. And this is not easy. So the CISM is the official certification for people who are going to become security managers, and I'm going to get that and get students to get that. And for color, I've got these political books, which are very interesting, which talk about why this is so necessary these days. So it all started in 2010 with the Aurora attack on Google. Or to be fair, it started long before that. But in 2005, I started hearing from my friends this hush-hush secret information that China was hacking everybody. But nobody would say so publicly, and nobody had any proof. And in 2010, shortly before this, Google had a big issue internally about whether they wanted to expand into China. Now, Google has a corporate mission. You need to have a mission statement for your business. And the mission statement guides everything you do. And Google's mission statement is that they are intending to index all the world's information. Now, that is leading to various problems. In particular, it leads to privacy problems. The very mission of Google is the opposite of privacy. But in particular, of course, the very mission of Google is intrinsically hostile to a nation like China that very much controls information. Inside China, they do not believe that the Tiananmen Square protest ever happened, and they do not believe that any of their leaders have scandals, and they hide all that from their people, like North Korea does. Their people live in sort of a bubble of falsehoods, or at least they're supposed to, and therefore, Google can't expand into China without either violating Chinese law, which is probably not going to work, or making a limited version of Google that would only show the government-approved content and block unfiltered news sites and such. And that might be contrary to Google's mission or contrary to Google's values. And after much internal debate and argument, they decided, like almost every American company has, that even though they have serious problems with the way things work in China, they can't ignore that market. China is so huge. You either expand into China or you accept being a second or third rate company forever. There are more people than the whole rest of the world. So, how can you ignore them? And there's another level too. How much do you really believe your values? I'll mention more later. I started teaching classes in Saudi Arabia. And as you know, the liberals in America right now, the Democrats, feel like Saudi Arabia is a terrible place and we should have nothing to do with them. The established military and the right wing say Saudi Arabia is a valuable military partner and we trust them entirely. There's an official list of how much we trust other nations, and Saudi Arabia is right there on our close friends list, right, like Canada and Japan. I checked this because before I teach there, I want to make sure I'm not violating American law, which was an issue when I started teaching classes in China. There are certain topics I'm not allowed to teach in China because they are on a second list of nations we don't trust very much. And you're only allowed to teach certain things there and other things you're not allowed to teach. And so a lot of people said, we should go into Saudi Arabia and say, all right, you idiots, I'm an American. Let me tell you how to run a government. We run governments right, you run governments wrong. And I really don't feel that way, especially lately. Anyway, but so what happened in 2010 is after Google made the questionable, difficult decision of expanding into China, China completely betrayed them. They did what they've done to every other American company. They force you to hire Chinese locals to work at your company, and those people are spies, and they steal all your technology and give it to China so they can make a Chinese knockoff. Then they kick you out of the country by crashing rules to kick you out, and then they run their Chinese knockoff and block you, which is what they were doing to Google. And in particular, then they hacked into the Google servers back at Google. So they're running their network back in Mountain View, and they see this data going off to China. They say, why is our data going off to China? They found these persistent malware stealing all their data. So what they did, which by the way, was just as illegal as what China did, they hacked into the server in China and stole it back. And I talked to the Secret Service agent, one of the ones involved in this. He came and gave a talk here, and she said, yes, we told them you can't do that. That's illegal too, but we didn't prosecute. So this is the problem with international activities on the internet. There is no universal law above them unless you're going to fight a war or have trade sanctions or go to The Hague and declare that something's a war crime. There is no legal standard above China and the US. There's no place to sue. There's no place to argue your case. You just sort of have diplomats get drunk and talk about it, and politicians posture. So Google committed a crime against Google, then Google committed a crime against China and stole it back, and they found all these other American companies that all had their data stolen too. And then Google did something no one else had ever done. They went public. They took it as a personal affront, and they publicly admitted that China had been hacking them. And this launched a new age of cybersecurity, because until then, companies would buy unified threat protection devices and antivirus and firewalls and authentication systems, and they would blissfully believe that we're not getting hacked. And what Google revealed was an open industry secret to the experts at the time, which is people are getting hacked, but they're getting hacked by smart attackers, and they don't know it. That's something that the speaker yesterday talked about. If somebody goes after you that really knows what they're doing, you will never know it. And that's what China had been inside Google stealing their stuff for months without ever being detected. And most companies, the average amount of time a company is hacked before they notice is 270 days. And many times it's years that you're under constant hostile control and you don't even know it. So this was the China Cyber, this was the original group, APT1. Mandiant developed this new technology to protect you from these advanced persistent threats, and they named the first group APT1, which is the military unit in China. And here they are hacking everybody. They found 115 incidents in the United States and elsewhere. And this, by the way, I was unable to find an official statement of this, but I've heard it many times. This is official stated policy of the Chinese government. They have the new China. They had a plan. It came out decades ago, and they said, we have a plan to modernize China, which, by the way, is working very well. China is currently growing in power, and the people have high morale, and they are going to be the next superpower, and everybody knows it. It's the way the United States was in the 1950s. We had beat Hitler. We were the manufacturing leader of the world. Our people, the parents saw their children having more opportunities and more wealth than they did. Everybody loves your country when that's happening. Your children are doing better than you are. You're on the upswing, and everybody sees your country is great. And that's not the way it is in America anymore, but that's the way it is in China. People have seen in a couple of decades, they've moved very far, very fast, and they explicitly said, we are going to do this by stealing technology. It's a socialist country. They don't believe that an individual could invent something valuable and then patent it and then keep it secret and not let anybody else have it. They don't think that's moral. And that is not an entirely stupid position to take. So from their point of view, it is not right for all these American companies to develop this technology and not share it with China. So they just steal it, which is far cheaper than having to reinvent it all. And then they just lie about it when America complains and pretend they're going to stop it. And somehow America spends most of their time arguing about what I would think is trivial stuff like stealing copyrighted movies and music, and not so much about other intellectual property. But it's all pretty bogus. I was reading an analysis while preparing for this talk. American companies are claiming China is stealing so many billions of dollars from us. Well, you know, Microsoft tried that. Like almost everybody in China uses pirate Microsoft software back in the days of XP. And so they say, well, how much money are they actually stealing? And Microsoft will say, well, Windows XP costs $80. Let's take $80 times 1 billion Chinese. They said, they were never going to pay that $80. Who are you kidding? You didn't lose that many sales. Nobody was going to pay that price there. And all these American companies are somehow claiming that when China steals their stuff and makes a knockoff, they're losing all this money, and yet they're all expanding into China. So there's a contradiction there. The fact is, business there is very different than business here. The rules are very different. But somehow the American companies haven't just stayed home, which is what they would do if they were really getting ripped off all that much. So it's not that simple as a good guy and a bad guy, and they need to just stop doing it. It's culture clashes are all more complicated than that. And if I can give you one sort of philosophical idea to remember, it's this: if you are arguing for one side of something and you're sure that the other side is an idiot, you're wrong. There's value on both sides, and that is a childish, immature thing. That's a bad thing. Let's punch the bad thing in the face. That is childish thinking. In the real world, there are reasons for people to take the other position, and you have to understand those reasons if you want to get anywhere. It is not enough to just call people bad and shoot them. You have to understand why they're doing what they're doing and figure out how to achieve some goals respecting your opponent. This was Obama's big thing, and I like it, although it didn't work out all that well for him. Anyway, so this is the modern world. You have the kill chain. This is how advanced persistent threats work. They choose a target. Because script kiddies typically just Google the internet to find vulnerable servers and hack whoever they find. So they hack shoe stores and game sites and stuff because all they want to do is put their name on the site and then brag. But that's advanced persistent threat actors are not playing games. They are military agencies with real resources, and they have goals. So they don't want to hack a random game store. They want to hack something like the Department of Defense and steal our latest planes. All the Chinese military planes are knockoffs of our planes, and they're exactly identical because they got spies in American governments to steal the original plans, and it's all detailed in those books. And they have exact copies of our major fighter planes. And so you define your target, then you find accomplices. You probably need people on the inside. These days, you often do it with supply chain attacks, like how Target got hacked. They hacked Target through the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, because those people had some ability to log into the system to monitor the product, and hacking through the third company was a lot easier. Now you get into the harder target through that. So you get accomplices, you get tools, research the people, then you install some kind of foothold on the network, then you make sure they have not detected you. You do not hit them with your most dangerous attack first. You hit them with a weak attack and see if they notice. If they notice, then you have to stop and reevaluate your procedures, because the problem with cyber weapons is they have an expiration date. The best weapons, which China has in great profusion, is zero-day attacks. These are new vulnerabilities found in important software like Windows and Mac OS X and Linux that nobody knows about. Now, as long as nobody knows about it, it's not defined in the firewalls, the antivirus, the intrusion detection systems, and people don't even know how to protect themselves by turning off a service or something. So you can just sail into any machine and take it over. But the problem is, if they are smart and they are monitoring your network, then they will detect the attack, and they will, now every time you use your attack, you give the target a copy of the attack tool. So you're hoping they're too stupid to see it. So this is why you have to decide, are these people actually monitoring their network and analyzing the malware, or do they have no clue? Because we don't want to burn our expensive, expendable zero-day bullets on a target that will catch us, unless we're convinced it's worth taking that risk. So then you deploy your control tools through the network. Then you make an outbound connection to the command and control server. This is really important. This is extremely risky for the attacker. This is likely where you will get caught. And it's, by the way, one of the best places for defenders to defend you. If you just limit outgoing traffic on your network, this is probably the #1 most important thing you can do. Alex Keller was here yesterday, and one thing he didn't mention is Stanford is the team that beats us in pen testing contests. We're #2, which is pretty good for community college, but Stanford beat us, and we asked him, the CCDC contest, people are attacking them. Professional red teamers attack your network, and Stanford twice won a special prize for never getting owned at all, which is incredible. And I asked him, how do you do it? And he said, we do it with egress filtering. We don't let any outgoing traffic that's not right leave. So even if they get to infect us, they can't get control of the machines. This is extremely powerful and not that hard to set up. Anyway, then you steal credentials, wander through the network, then you start stealing data, and then you keep on hiding your data, so you just live on the network. When Google found that China had hacked them in the Aurora attack, they found that not only did they have malware stealing our data right now, they had sleeper malware that would go to sleep for a month and wake up in a month and start stealing data again. And they had other sleeper malware that would go to sleep for 3 years and wake up 3 years from now and start stealing data again. So even when you think it's clean and you restore from your supposedly clean backups, you're still owned. This is the way you do it. If you are not messing around, you're a military organization, you want to own this, you have resources, you're serious about it, you really want to stay in that country, That's how you do it. This is the modern APTs at the top level of security. And stopping this sounds impossible, but it's not impossible. But it has taken us about 8 or 9 years to learn how to stop this kind of attack. Here are the major APT groups. American is, by the way, the number one. I'm just glad to hear Alex talk about this. We are the number one aggressor in the world. This is one thing. Whenever America complains to China, hey, you're hacking us, they say, we're hacking you, you're hacking us. We totally are. We're hacking everybody 10 times more than they're hacking us. We have most of the internet here. We have the most of the criminals here. We have the most dangerous military here. We are the number one aggressor in all fields of war in the world. We're the modern Sparta in that regard. So we just don't like to advertise what we're doing, but we're totally hacking everybody right and left. The problem is China doesn't really have anything much we want. So stealing intellectual property from China is not mostly what we're doing. But anyway, China was the first and biggest one with a bunch of different groups in China hacking us with all these advanced resistant threat numbers. Iran is in the game. North Korea is in the game. North Korea is a very baffling country. The economy and the manufacturing sector does not work at all. It is amazing. People are forced to work in the military, then they don't actually have anything to do, so they're mostly standing around unable to do their jobs. So they have no real actual engine to generate money, so what they do is steal money on the internet, and that's how they fund their nation, mostly through cyber cryptocurrency hacks. And then you got Russia. Russia is very scary. Russia is like the United States. It's a country in decline. It's an empire in decline. So they feel themselves to have greatly lost their power. In the days of the USSR, that was their glory time when they had many satellite nations under their control and they were expanding and they ruled the world. And then Gorbachev came and made a deal with America and took down the wall and they dissolved the USSR, which was seen inside Russia as a huge betrayal and a crisis and a disaster for them. And that's why they put in Putin, who claims he's going to restore the glory of Russia and make it the way it was when it was the USSR and everybody feared them. And that's what they're trying to do, is to gain back that prestige they used to have. So they do a lot of really nasty things, and Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear are part of the names. Let me see if there's anybody get this irritating Zoom thing off the screen. It's one of the defects of this product. Anyway, so here's the biggest threats. Russia, the number one threat that we noticed is, of course, they rigged the last election. Many people are upset about this. The conventional wisdom on the left in America is that Donald Trump was put in there by the Russians because they hacked our election, and what we have to do is censor the internet and remove free political speech off Yahoo, Facebook and Twitter and everything, so that the Russians don't hack us again, so we can have a Democrat in there, which is surely what the American people want. Now, by San Francisco standards, I'm considered a flaming right-winger because I think Donald Trump was only wrong like 95% of the time. And but I think this is all garbage. The Russians did not hack our election. They didn't take over the voting machine and change the votes. What they did was propaganda, and we do that to them and everybody else. They had a bot army to make things look popular when they weren't, but I don't think this is anything new. As far as I can tell, the American Revolutionary War came about exactly the same way. There was something called the Federalist Papers where they made fake social media profiles at the time and pretended that there was a popular uprising against Britain, which there was not, and made people so angry that they went to war against Britain for no amazingly good reason and without much good consequence. But anyway, regardless, now Trump on the right has joined this. Both the right and the left have now decided that we are going to censor the internet, which is really interesting, and again makes me wonder about our high and mighty superiority over China. Now, China censors political and speech on the internet very much, and now America does too. About a year ago, Twitter announced they're going to hire 10,000 censors, and Facebook is going to hire 10,000 human censors to remove forbidden material from social media, just like China does. And now they're having exposés about these poor people that have to watch all this horrible stuff and how it messes up their psychology. But we now have an army of censors to remove political and other speech from the internet, just like China does. I think it's a mistake, but nobody asked me. So anyway, that Russia attacks the other thing which is kind of fun here is Russia was not supporting Donald Trump. Russia supported two candidates equally, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, because what they want is to weaken us. Russia believes that the world is a zero-sum game, and that if they tear us down, that will benefit them. Because, of course, it is true. Other countries typically have to accept a big brother to watch over them, small countries. like North Korea and South Korea. They can't survive on their own in this world with big monsters fighting, so they have to ally to one monster or the other. You either become an ally of America or you become an ally of Russia. And so if they manage to humiliate and weaken America, then they will be able to convince more nations to ally with them. It is correct. So they just see harming us and disrupting our process and causing people to lose faith in our democracy as a benefit for them. And that was their goal. They correctly realized that if Bernie or Trump won, they were both so extreme that half of our citizens would spend the next 4 years screaming and yelling and going crazy about it. And that's what they want. Everybody says, why should we be democratic? Your democratic system just seems to be howling madness. So anyway, they got that in. And so China just wants to steal our intellectual property so they can move forward and improve life for their citizens. Iran, they've been doing lots of attacks. The one thing they did was steal the Game of Thrones and leak it for some unknown reason. I don't quite know how that benefited them. And then North Korea is a very strange country, but their main thing to do is steal money with cryptocurrency, but they also spread WannaCry to shut down the hospitals and kill people. And Russia also likes to kill people. We'll talk more about that later. So here's a brief history. In 2010, the United States started Stuxnet. This was the first malware that destroyed physical hardware. We wanted to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons, so we infected their isotope separators with malware that broke them physically. And this was the first cyber weapon that caused physical damage of any notable amount. It was also a secret US-Israeli project, but it leaked out strangely just in time for Obama's re-election campaign. Suddenly it leaked out that the United States had really done this, and therefore Obama was cool. Anyway, then Russia decided to mess with the election in Ukraine. The Russian attack on the American election, of course, is not the first time they did. Ukraine is the most cyber-aware country. They do all their elections online. People don't have paper ballots or anything. Everybody does everything online. And the Russians hacked it like crazy and messed with it. And by the way, according to this book I read, one of those books at the start, they say this is now the safest country in the world. Instead of going back to paper ballots, they just hardened their system. And the main thing they did was educate their people. High school students get cyber hygiene classes and everything. Everyone's warned, don't open attachments, don't click on weird links. And it's so effective, they're now very clean. Everybody is trained to be more aware of security risks. Anyway, then the Russians took over networks here, and Chinese started stealing records. This is when they got the OPM. They stole our military records of the weaknesses of all our on-duty military, the information they had to submit to get their security clearance, with very high-value data, and the Chinese got it. And then there's WannaCry, and the Russians took on power in Ukraine, and so on. These are big ones. So here's the general scorecard of physical damage. The United States was way above everybody in 2009. We had the only people that had actually done physical damage with malware. But later on, Russia got into that, as we'll talk about it. And here you've got DDoS, where you just take things down temporarily by flooding the network with traffic. That's considered an annoyance, not a very serious problem. Here you have wipers that destroy computers by wiping the hard drive. And the most dangerous is at the top. Only 2 nations so far have made weapons that actually physically destroy hardware. So here's a summary of it all. The US in 2009 hit Iran. Many people kept hitting the US. A lot of people like the Koreas. South Korea keeps getting it from North Korea, and on it goes. And Russia hits a lot of people, in particular, a lot of people in the Mideast, which is how I ended up sucked into the Mideast a bit. Here's the Chinese attacks on a timeline. Many, many, many attacks from 2002 to 2014. You see the Aurora attack in the middle there around 2010. These are the big Chinese campaigns. And like I say, back here in 2002, 2003, 2004, security professionals knew about these attacks, but they could not speak publicly. If you become a security professional, a company will hire you to investigate intrusions and help them. And the first thing they always make you do is sign a non-disclosure agreement. You cannot tell anybody what you did. Same thing like a doctor or a lawyer. Your client has secrets, and it is not your place to reveal those secrets. You help them, and then it is their decision whether to tell anybody. And all the companies before Google chose to not tell anybody because they were not legally required to disclose at this time. And they all saw it as offering them no benefit. All it will do is humiliate them and make their stock price go down. Anyway, so there's a lot of this. You either been hacked, you've been hacked by the Chinese, or you don't know you've been hacked by the Chinese. Those are the only 2 kinds of companies. And there's many other kinds of attacks here. A good book in this, but I want to just skip over some more of this. This is the one that got me involved in Saudi Arabia. The Russians attacked Saudi Arabia several times in the last 3 years. They attacked with an attack called Shamoon, but this is the one that really upset people, and this was about a year ago, maybe even less. They attacked a petrochemical plant from Aramco, the biggest oil company in the world, and they turned off the safety features in the plant to try to kill people. Now, somehow it was detected before it actually killed people, but this and like 3 or 4 similar attacks really, really scared people. Their entire economy is based on oil, and they are helpless. They're currently relatively insecure into the cybersecurity field, and they are very concerned with becoming trained as fast as possible. So people in Saudi Arabia contacted me. They sent me emails, and then a guy called me and said, maybe you ignored those emails. Maybe you thought they were spam. I'm not kidding. I really want you to come teach cybersecurity in Saudi Arabia. And I said, well, I never thought of that, but maybe I'll talk to this guy. And he totally started us doing that. Liz and I have been teaching stuff there, and we're going to probably travel there soon. They are not kidding. They said, we are in huge trouble. The Russians are killing people, hacking us, and we need to improve our security posture right now, and we're going to pay for Americans. We see Americans as the world's cybersecurity leader, which is probably true, except maybe for Israel. And they said, we're totally willing to bring you here to teach us stuff, and it's going pretty well. So anyway, so here's the other information about Russian attacks. These include non-cyber attacks. Russia is expanding just to harm and humiliate other nations. So they've been killing people. And what's interesting is this is the new Cold War. Nobody wants to start a real war with nuclear weapons flying around. So what they do is they try to further their goals by doing small attacks, which are too small to provoke a war. And Russia started doing this. They killed Litvenko with plutonium-210. Then they killed Skripal. These are guys who were criticizing the Russian government, and then they fled to the UK. And the point of Russia is they wanted to make everyone understand that if you talk bad about Putin, you will die. It doesn't matter where you are. And they both cases, they moved so much of these they used special hazardous attacks using chemicals that only Russians have in order to make a deliberate signature. If the Mexican cartel kills you, they don't just put you in an alley, they hang you from a tree and paint slogans on you so everybody knows exactly who did it, because they want to inspire terror, and the Russians want to inspire terror. They wanted to make it very clear that we don't care where you are, we're going to take enough poison to kill thousands of people right into the heart of London, and leave it there, and leave it all over the place, so it'll hurt other people too, so they all know that we have no fear of anybody. And the UK did nothing, and the US did nothing. Trump is, of course, big close friends with Putin. Obama was close friends with him. And here's Hillary handing a reset switch to the Russians, saying, oh, we'll forgive you for the countries you've invaded and the people you've killed, and just try to have a clean slate. And they just do it over and over again. Nobody really knows how to deal with this. We don't really want to start a war, so what do? This is the asymmetric modern world of warfare. And so Dan Coates is the guy that tried to tell Trump that the Russians hacked the election and they were going to do it again. And so Trump fired him and replaced him with a guy from Fox News who will just say what he wants to hear. And when I was starting off being angry at Trump, I said, what a rotten guy he is. Now I realize he's not wrong. The number one concern of every leader is to keep his own power. This is what Trump told Comey. Your job is to help me stay in power. Don't go babbling to me about stuff that makes me look bad. You have to help me look good. That's not entirely stupid. At first, I was very inclined to be angry about that, but anger is the sign of immaturity in my experience. If you're angry at somebody, you are being childish. You need to understand them better, and then you can move beyond anger to seeing what's really going on. When you're angry, you are not seeing the truth. You're exaggerating one person's bad point. There's a reason why they do that. But anyway, this is the latest thing. Mitch McConnell is Russian accent. Mitch McConnell strongly believes that the federal government should not meddle in state elections. He's had this opinion for decades, long before the Russian cyber attack, but now he is continuing to block all bills to increase United States oversight over state elections. And all the bills that Democrats are pushing through for cybersecurity have that effect. So he's blocking them, and he's now being blamed as being a Russian asset. And not that the Russians are directly in control of him, but like Trump, he's a useful idiot. The Russians can further their goals with this guy, and there's some truth in that. But it's not exactly as simple as him just being directly controlled by the Russians. Anyway, so the US made Stuxnet first, and Stuxnet was very interesting. I gave a lot of talks about it at the time. It was very interesting to learn how it worked. And anyway, I want to just talk a bit about defense. So we've had a lot of classes about this. Practical malware analysis is a big one. So you're going to have people attacking your network with new viruses. So you have to learn how to take apart a virus and see what it does. Incident response is this new thing in computer security. Until about 2010 or 2012, everybody thought you put up a firewall, it keeps the attackers out, our network is clean. Anything inside our network, we will trust it. Then they'll realize that's totally not true. People are inside our network, bad people, so we have to accept that and deal with it. So we have to have a way to detect intrusions and a way to respond to intrusions while we're doing business. We can't just panic and shut everything down every time we get hacked. It's just going to be a fact of life that a certain amount of intrusions are going to happen. So I have an exploit development class, and this is the one I want to show you, is network security monitoring. When I taught ethical hacking years ago, one of my students came and said, gee, I was doing my homework last week. I said, yeah. And he said, oh, I was doing your homework at work. And I said, where do you work? He said, oh, I work at a bank. And I said, that really sounds like a bad idea. He said, yeah, I was doing my homework. I downloaded this hacking tool, and then the phone rang. And they're like, this is the network security team. What are you doing down there? Knock it off. And I said, hey, that's, in the first place, don't do your homework at work in this class. Are you nuts? And in second place, I wonder how they did that. That's cool. I want to do that on my network. I would like to know when somebody's doing something suspicious. And so the tool that's used mainly for this is Splunk, although this is for after-the-fact analysis, not for live blockage typically. And I just wanted to show it to you. This is an easy thing to learn. It's extremely important. They're a San Francisco-based company. They have the 4th highest pay in America. 95 of the Fortune 100 use this product, and it has a free version you can learn on, which I've set up here. And this is a scenario you can practice on, which Splunk provided to the world for free. So this is what Splunk does. Splunk is log management. It is Google for log files. So you have a corporate network. It's got a web server, an email server. It's got firewalls. It's got antivirus, intrusion detection systems. And all those things send their data to Splunk. And Splunk organizes it all. And now you can search through it all. So it's got Suricata is an intrusion detection system that notices suspicious traffic on the network. Here's a web server. And there are other things here. Here's Windows event logs. Everything on a Windows machine, it logs all these things. There's a security log and a system log and so on. There's a lot of things here. So you can find intrusions by just querying this Splunk data. So if I go to all time and set index equal bots v1, I think, yeah. That's boss of the SOC. Let me make that a little bigger. All right. Now I can search for, say, stream. Let me go to my instructions. I gave this to people as a contest, and I'm just going through it. So I'm going to start with source type stream HTTP. Now, the easiest way to do that is to use the GUI. I can go to, I can search all time here, and I'm going to make it show me only 1% of the results to make it faster. So it's found 500 events. These are the log entries. Each line is a log entry that came from some system recording something that happened on your network. And you can see the source type here. So there are 16 different source types in there. And what I would like is to look at the HTTP data, which is monitoring network traffic like Wireshark and recording HTTP requests and responses. So now there's less of them, only 227. These are HTTP requests and responses. So in here, I have various fields available to look at it. And what I'd like to do is see an HTTP request. If I get rid of the filter, oh, then the name of the website that they have set is I'm Really Not Batman. There, I'm really not Batman.com. That was the domain name they used. This is what Splunk paid their people to do, is they set up a whole little corporate network on Amazon, and then they attacked it, and they recorded all the events from real attacks. So they made this thing, I'm Really Not Batman. So this is requests for web pages that have the name of their web page in it. So what these are going to be is customers requesting the page and the server handing it out. So if you look down here, you'll see a HTTP request. Notice this is a weird looking request. It has all these parentheses, and down here is something really important, the name of a vulnerability scanner, Acunetics. This is what attackers typically do. They get professional tools to look for network vulnerabilities, and they run them against your network. And what those tools do is send a lot of weird requests like this with a lot of extra punctuation marks, because those will cause certain web servers to display their vulnerabilities. So this is attack traffic. And if you look at the source of this traffic, it is one of the attacker's machines attacking the server, finding its vulnerability. And if you look at the destination IP of this, that is the web server. So now I know the IP address of the web server. And now there's one more thing I'd like to show you. If I go back here and I get rid of I'm Really Not Batman, so I look at all HTTP traffic, and then I look for the HTTP method. Should be down here someplace. There. there's two methods used to load web pages. There are other, these are by far the most common. Get means you just want to see a page. Post means you want to log into a page. So I'm going to look at the get requests only. And now that I've done that, I'm going to turn off the sampling to see them all, because I'm now going to look for rare events. If I go down here and I look at client IP, it will show me the various values of client IP. These are people who viewed the web page and sent GET requests, or they viewed some web page. And notice there are 8 events here that have that address as the source address of a GET. This is a poorly designed network, like most American networks. It is vulnerable to intrusion because they did not do what I told you. They didn't do exit filtering. What's happening here, that is the IP of the web server. Your web server should never issue a GET. You should not be able to open a browser on your server and go to the internet and download a file. That is a terrible idea for 2 reasons. And by the way, if you install Windows, it will automatically block Internet Explorer on your web server, so to discourage you from doing that. The reason you should never do that is because if you want to put a file on the web server, you don't open a browser and download it. You download it somewhere else, scan it for viruses, and move it over with a file share or something, because it could be malicious. That could be a malicious web page infecting the server, and you don't want to infect the server. But the stronger reason is this is what the bad guys want. The bad guys will find a vulnerability and run a file on the server, and then the server, remember that kill chain, the server will try to phone home to the command and control server. You should not allow your web server to make any outgoing requests for anything. It should only be a server and never a client. That's basic traffic control, basic network hygiene. So these 8 requests are going backwards. This is the web server sending a GET out to some other server. This should never be allowed on your network. And since this network didn't block it, somebody was able to do it, and that is malicious activity. And this way, out of the 1 million events, I've gotten down to 8 events that I know are malicious because the traffic is going backwards. And that's why people pay piles of money for Splunk. You can take a corporate network with millions of events, and you can very quickly find the bad stuff and analyze it. And now if you look at this stuff, you'll see right here it is. They infected the machine, and then they downloaded this image, this JPEG image, and they used it to deface the web page. This is one of several attacks. And then the rest of this here is a ransomware attack and a bunch of other attacks here, and you can totally go through and find them all with this sample data. And all this is with the free version of Splunk. So anyway, that was a important thing. I've been going around, I've been doing this at DEF CON and everywhere. Everybody, Splunk is extremely easy to use, although the main thing you do is you have to learn what log files look like, and that takes a little practice, and everybody is hiring like crazy for it. So I've been teaching this class as one of our many classes here, and I've been teaching people to get this Splunk certification. It's very easy. Splunk Core Certified User. There are more advanced ones, but you can get jobs with that. And my friends that work at Splunk say they're embarrassed by how luxurious it is. They're rolling in the money. It's a very expensive product. You can easily spend $50,000 a year in licensing fees, and companies do it because it is worth it. Your employees will find the attacks and understand them much faster with a real professional tool than they will if you use the cheap knockoffs. Anyway, that's all I wanted to show you, I think. I think we're about at time. Are there questions out there? Well, I guess I'll stop then. I'll just mention if you want any of this stuff, if anybody does, I put them right here on my homepage. So the slides are here, and here's the link to that threat hunting with Splunk thing. Anyway, I'm going to stop this share. I'll put a video on YouTube up there if anybody wants to see that. But that's it, I guess.
Hey, Sam, can you tell, today they worked on forensics.